And as far as I know, we're expecting everyone to join us except Sterling, who called Laura and said he was having a health issue that we hope isn't serious, but so he's not going to join us tonight. But otherwise, I think everyone will be here. So welcome. I'm happy to call the meeting to order. It's good to see all of you. And, I just want to start by acknowledging sort of the obvious, which is our team continues to do an amazing job under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. And hopefully we're gradually coming out the other end, the better end of this. But the team has really risen to the occasion and, gets up every day to do amazing things. And so I have huge gratitude and appreciation for that. And I know all of you share that. And I saw a couple of little applause signs for those who know how to do that, like Mara and Emily's thumbs up and everything. So thank you to the team. And then with that, I guess, Laura, should we go straight to approval of the minutes? And for this meeting, we have basically a rough or probably pretty precise transcript from the January meeting that will serve as the minutes. We have to keep transcripts anyway. And we probably will go back to minutes in the future just because I think it's probably a better practice to have a briefer summary. But for the purpose of this meeting, I would ask you to approve the January transcript. So if somebody could make a motion and then we can open it up for questions.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Terry makes the motion, Judy seconds. Further discussion or any questions on this? Okay, I guess I have to do a roll call since this is an electronic meeting. So I'm just going to go in my order on the screen. So Judy, are you in favor?
Favor.
Okay, Terry?
Yes.
Hadley?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Mara?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Colette?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can move screens here. Jenny?
Yes.
And Patrick?
Yes.
Ahmad?
Yes.
Okay, I think that is everyone. So the minutes or the transcript is approved. So with that, Laura, I think I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. And hello, everybody. It's always nice to see everyone. Thank you for spending this time with us this evening. We sent some materials and I'm going to ask Laura to project because our big topic for conversation tonight, we're going to cover two big things. One is we're going to talk about our reopening plans. The other is we are going to talk about, just give you a very brief update on Anacostia Middle Campus and the work that we're doing to make sure that our AMC students have a permanent building. But we're going to start by talking about reopening. So it felt like in order to be able to set the stage for how we're thinking about next year, I want to take like a little bit of a step back just to make sure that we're thinking about like all of the things that we are trying to achieve going into next year. So we've talked with you for many years about org evolution, and we have started to implement our org evolution changes, and that work has to continue. And in some ways, some of the things that we're doing this year, are underway, but we will experience them in new ways for next year. So let me talk a little bit about what that means. So this year, our focus has really been around making sure that our students feel known and loved about and challenged on an individual level so that they can continue to grow academically. And our goal has been that each of our students continues to make academic gains of at least a year's worth of progress in both reading and math. And we've done a lot of work this year in order to invest in both social emotional learning and like academic gains. And we've done that through a variety of things. We've implemented a new social emotional learning curriculum. We have adjusted to having a pod structure so that way each of our teachers is able to build very deep relationships with students where they really know students as people, and can make sure that students are remaining on track academically. And we have been working with our staff to think about how our journey and org evolution is going to continue, both in terms of like what we teach and how we teach, focusing both on academics and social emotional learning. We've also made a bunch of staffing changes, as you all remember, and that has meant in our early childhood and kindergarten classrooms, shifting from having 2 teachers in a classroom to having a lead teacher and an assistant teacher, and changing a few additional positions, both at the middle school level and at the elementary level, and that will continue for next year. And so because we are changing our staffing model, that's going to have implications for how we structure the school day. And it will feel different to be a teacher at DC Prep next year, in ways that we believe are both supportive of students and also more challenging for our adults, because they will have less planning time. And we had to do that in order to be able to increase teacher salaries in the way that we had planned. And so we want to be really thoughtful about like how much change our adults are experiencing, because it's really by making sure that our adults are able to show up in their best way that they are then positioned to be able to support students in the most productive way. And so we're thinking both about like, what are we trying to achieve from a student perspective, and how can we support our grown-ups to support students effectively. So right now we are at the beginning of our phased reopening process. And that means that we have a little bit over 200 students who are coming to school on Wednesdays to participate in the spring enrichment program. We are also planning some in-person gatherings, for example, graduation this spring, in very like small outdoor contexts. Over the summer, we will have a summer school program that serves like 500 to 600 students, which is a much bigger program than we typically have. And it will take place at all 6 of our campuses, which is different than what we've done in the past. We've typically had summer school take place at 1 campus. But we believe that all of these steps are going to be helpful in laying the groundwork for a full reopening in the fall, where we are able to offer every student the ability to come to school 5 days a week on campus. And we expect that all of our students will, with the exception of students who have medical conditions that make it necessary for them to participate in the virtual program. So as we think about moving forward towards a full reopening, we know that there's a lot to manage, right? There was a lot just as a product of all of the org evolution shifts that we have been planning and like beginning to phase in. There's a lot because school buildings have largely been closed for 18 months. And so each of our school buildings is going to feel a lot like a new school opening when we reopen in August. And so that's going to require a lot of time and attention to make sure that our schools are forming and like reforming their community in a joyful and thoughtful way, but also in ways that are going to feel pretty different for everyone, because we will still have to have new protocols in place just due to COVID. So for all of those reasons, we just want to make sure that we are even more intentional about all of the reopening planning that we're doing. So given that that is such a significant undertaking, we've been trying to think a lot about how we will account for that in our planning. So the things that we're trying to keep in mind are, one, this is a multi-year process. We are not going to be back to normal in 1 year, right? And so we really need to think about like how we're focusing year by year to make sure that we are fully supporting students to get what they need. But we're thinking about like the right sequencing and the right pacing. We're also trying to create a very inclusive planning process. We have done a lot more to engage our teachers in particular, but kind of other staff members as well in our planning for next year, because the more investment that we are able to build, the more that we are able to share plans with our families through the town halls that we've been holding. We believe the better our reopening will go, because people will understand what we're doing, the rationale behind it, and feel like they had a voice in being able to shape our plans. We're also investing heavily in mental health. We know that that is a concern and a place where we need to make sure that we are very deliberate. And so that is a major focus of like additional budgets school year is in mental health. We are trying to be really clear about what we're doing and not doing as a way to be able to let people do their best work by focusing on the most important work. So we're trying to like think about where can we manage complexity. And one of the places that I'll get to in a minute is like in the use of a virtual school. And then we're just trying to be really upfront with people about like the best laid plans are always subject to some level of change, because we're always going to be responsive to conditions. And so we're planning right now for certain roles to be particularly flexible. And I'll talk about that again in a second when I talk about our virtual school. So that's kind of like the big context of like the things that are in our mind as we are going forward with our planning. So on the next slide, it outlines like just a multi-year view of what we're doing year by year. And this is really just thinking about like, what are some of the additional spends that we are going to put in place? This is obviously not like all of the work that we are doing, because there's a lot more to what we're doing within our program. But what this illustrates is in the coming year, our big areas of additional spend through the stimulus dollars that we will receive support health and safety. So what are the things that we need to do within our school buildings to make sure that we are implementing COVID testing, that we have plenty of PPE, we're making any building modifications that we need to make, that we're investing in students' ability to have Chromebooks at home. Those are all things that, that we are investing in. Additionally, like I said before, we're investing in well-being. We're doing that in a couple of ways. First, we will have an expanded partnership with the Wise Center at Georgetown. We will have 3 additional clinicians, a supervising clinician, and a psychiatrist who will be able to work across our schools. So this is like a meaningful investment in mental health services. We will also have grief and loss training for all of our instructional staff members. And then we will be operating a virtual school. And the virtual school is both to meet the needs of students who are unable to come in person because of a medical condition, and it's to make sure that we are able to support our teachers to be able to do their best work. And one of the things that we've heard from other school systems around the country is just how hard it is for a teacher to be able to effectively teach the students who are right in front of them and teach the students who are learning from home. And so rather than trying to have teachers kind of pulled in those 2 directions, we're trying to simplify and streamline by having teachers either focus on students who need to learn from home or focus on the students who are learning from the school building. And then finally, in terms of academic acceleration, I've already talked about how we'll have a larger summer school program. We know that we will need to make additional investments in students who require SPED services. And then we will also be thinking about how we can think about whether we can move staff who we might initially start in our virtual program. We might end up transitioning them into working on site as interventionists to provide like additional catch-up support for students who most need it. And so that will be a place where we're going to have some shifts over the course of the year. And when I was talking about the need to be intentionally messaging this point around flexibility, that's a role where we think flexibility will be most important. Should I pause there for a second, or do you want me to talk about school year, about the next 2 school years?
You mentioned that these are financial impacts. Do you have the rough estimates of what this will cost?
Yes, we do have those estimates. I'm going to suggest that we intentionally tried to keep this kind of at a higher level, because in our next meeting, we will be going into detail in the budget. And then in each of our committee meetings, we will be talking more at a detailed level about what we will do about like the financial impact of all of this. So if it's okay with you, Terry, what I'm going to suggest is that we really
Sure.
dip into the budget in our committee meetings.
Thank you.
And I was going to sort of jump in and say that as well, which I think we had meant to say up front, which is that because the mayor's budget has not yet been approved by City Council, we're holding off until our June meeting so that we really have hard numbers for the per capita student funding formula particularly. But I thought it would be helpful for everyone to understand at a high level the strategic thinking that Laura and the team are doing over the next 3 years, because we are going to get an infusion of new money, that's COVID related, and we have to use it over the next 3 years. So they're consciously thinking about this in a sequenced and thoughtful manner. And then the money will go away at the end of 3 years. So we want to make sure we spend it wisely and in a way that we recognize that it's not going to be recurring in the future.
Yes, thanks, Michaela. I think that's important context, especially because, as we think about how we can invest in our students, we are trying to be really thoughtful about the nature of the funding, right? So because it is short-term dollars, it makes it that much more challenging to think about additional positions, because positions are one of the most helpful ways to invest in kids. And at the same time, it's really hard when positions have to go away. And so we've been thinking a lot about where can we rely on partnerships to be able to provide the additional capacity that we need in a way that also creates some more natural dividing lines between, where does a role live. So that's one of the reasons why the WISE partnership felt like such a natural place for us to invest.
I'm curious with the WISE fellowship. Does WISE bring their funds? Because they also fundraise themselves so that they can do outreach. So are they bringing their funds, or do we pay them to provide this?
We pay them to provide this.
Okay.
If you want to talk to them about bringing their funds, I would be really excited about that.
Well, I mean, they do raise a lot of money. More would probably know more about that, but I mean, they do that so that they can expand their reach. So I'm curious just how they fund it. And do they have a linkage with children who will need ongoing treatment and therapy, or will they continue to see those at Georgetown, or how does that work for those who may need more extended care?
That's a great question. Katie, do you know the answer to that?
Can you clarify what you mean by extended care?
Well, I think that you have 3 clinicians there, and I don't even know if are they full-time, the 3 clinicians? I mean,
Yes.
for someone who needs to be seen regularly on an ongoing basis, and maybe needs to be seen outside of the school setting. I don't know if they have a relationship with Georgetown for the kids to be picked up, or I don't know.
Well, we have, in addition to the 3 WISE
Uh-huh.
clinicians, we have our own internal clinicians, 1 per campus.
Uh-huh.
Then we also have one clinician per campus who is managed through our DBH partnership through April, May.
I see.
So these 3 WISE clinicians are above and beyond 12 other clinicians that we have.
So
in the
you're
mix.
there to cover all of the clinical care that people need. And can you bill, I mean, again, for this money, can you bill their insurance at offer for those that have even Medicaid to get some reimbursement for it?
In terms of Medicaid reimbursement, I don't know the specifics of if we can bill for these services. We get some Medicaid reimbursement. I think Dan would know that maybe better than me. If he doesn't, I can ask our director of special education, Michelle. She would know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't think we can, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I agree with Katie that we do bill for Medicaid. I don't know if these services fall under it, but we can follow up and clarify that.
There may be some way to get some reimbursement. Or people with even insurance that could cover some of it.
Yeah. So, as Katie was describing, you know, we as an organization invest heavily in mental health, but we just anticipate that there's going to be an even more significant need in the next few years, and we want to make sure that we are accounting for that in our planning. And so this is why we're making this additional investment. So next school year, our focus will, you know, again, kind of, we will be tapering. We will still make an investment in health and safety. We anticipate that there will still be PPE and janitorial needs that we will have, but it will be a smaller investment than in next school year. We will continue a partnership with WISE, and then we will also layer in additional academic acceleration supports, either in terms of pulling forward some of the additional roles that we are adding to support our virtual program. We will, instead of having them support a virtual program, we anticipate the virtual program, we're planning for that to only be a 1-year undertaking. We will then take those staff members and move them into campus roles where they're able to provide intervention support to students. And so we assume that the number of positions will decrease over time, but this is really positive in that we think we will still be able to have the funding to be able to support the equivalent of, you know, some number of additional interventionists each year for several years, which is really helpful for us, both in terms of, you know, this is not a 1-year need, but also it's a way for us to think differently about the conversations that we have with those who may be interested in coming to work for us, but are going to be more compelled by like a multi-year opportunity. So this gives us a little bit more runway. Are there big questions about kind of like the big picture that we're trying to achieve?
Hey, Laura, this is Patrick. One thing I noticed from a difference from 21-22 to 22-23 is that there are no more building modifications in 22 and 23. So are we assuming that we'll get everything done in 21-22?
Yeah, we're assuming that like most of the modifications are going to be taking place like now, get ready for like this school year. And I would say we're also thinking about like certain types of building modifications don't hit our budget in the same way. And so it allows us to think differently about like the pots of money that we're drawing from. And that creates, that enables us to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of doing what we believe we need to do in terms of making sure that our buildings are fully functional. But I would say, I think Dan should correct me. I think we feel pretty good that the biggest changes that we will need to make, we will have done for the fall.
That's right. The building work we're thinking of is mostly one-time work. So that's why it doesn't repeat in every year. Things like we now have hand sanitizing dispensers in every classroom. We have a HEPA filter in every classroom. So we've made those investments for 21-22, and we'll continue to use them throughout the 3-year period as needed by health guidance, but we won't have to spend more money.
Yeah, I sent out a while ago. I can send it out again. But there was the Harvard Public Health School. They put out a brochure or a pamphlet. They did some research and they said, hey, this is how we should build safe schools in the future and stuff based on COVID and everything. But I'll send it out again. So as those plans are put together on like what those modifications are, there may be some good nuggets there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other comments or questions? Should probably keep going, Laura.
Okay, so next, what we shared with you in your materials was a draft school plan. So that's it looks something like this. And what you see here, and you've probably, I can't remember, I'm sure we've like shared school plans with you in the past, but the school plan is something that we create every year. And it's a way to be able to encapsulate, okay, this is what our focus is on for the coming year. And it also gives some context around like, these were some of the wins that we had over the course of this year. The place where I would really draw your attention would be in the initiatives that are outlined on page 5. So I think the big picture headline is, as an organization, we were founded with a focus on academic learning and social emotional development. And I think we've always really tried to do everything that we do in service of that commitment. But what that has looked like every year has continued to evolve as we have learned more about what students most need to be successful in life. And as we have listened to feedback from our students, their families, and our staff about the things that we do or don't do that we need to change and think differently about. And so when I think about next year's school plan, it feels like a long time coming. And it is really, really exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking because there's so much in there that I am excited about and proud of. And when I hear the feedback that we've gotten so far from our staff about the recommendations that, that they've helped to develop and that are now kind of coming to life, the feedback is, these are the right things. And wow, this is a lot. And that is, that's awesome. And it's a little bit, like we got a lot to do. Because what we are trying to do is really think differently about what students will experience on a daily basis. Like we're thinking differently about our behavior system and the way that a teacher responds in the moment when a student does something that is kind of outside the norms of like that classroom community, like how the teacher responds in a way that is supportive of the student and helps them to like grow into the young adults that, we all want them to grow into. It also represents a lot of changes in our academic programming that we believe will better support student learning. And it continues the emphasis on deeply knowing each individual student to help them to grow, right? And so like, that's like a huge oversimplification. You saw the initiatives, but like, I wanted just to be clear on like the headline news, which is just like, we're getting good feedback so far from our staff. And it will be a lot. I'm gonna ask Katie if she has anything in particular that she wants to highlight in terms of like other reactions from our campus leaders or from families. Patrick and Nicole, and I don't know if Mercedes is on. But if you guys have any feedback on like what you read in the school, I would be curious about your reactions as well.
The only thing I would highlight is that we've been working on, obviously we've had a lot of task forces over the last several years for org evolution, but starting in February, we merged the org evolution recommendations with reopening and invited a lot of people into the process. So we've had several different meetings with small groups to prepare for the upcoming year, but we've also had full staff meetings and family town halls to update and get feedback along the way. The last meeting we had to do that with the full staff was April 21st, and there was a family town hall at each of the campuses around that timeline as well. And now we're bringing back the version you're seeing to staff tomorrow morning. They will see the final product, and then families will see it on May 27th. Yes, next Thursday. So we'll get another final round of feedback at that point.
I would just add that I think from my perspective, participating in some of the town halls, I think they're good. I think the message is great. I think people explain the information, do a great job communicating. But what I've noticed is that with there's a lack of participation from parents. I think that the time
Patrick, I think you may have frozen up. And maybe if you turn the video off and try to just use audio for a while.
at those different meetings and stuff.
Patrick, can you go back a minute? I think I missed a portion of what you said. I think if you go back to you've attended town halls, you think that the information has been communicated well, and then there was a but, and I think we lost what happened after that.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, I was just going to say, I think the thing that I noticed, I just would hope that the participation would be a little bit from the parents, talking pure numbers wise and stuff. We have a lot of students, but at the ones that I've participated in, I would think that we would have had a lot more parents on than what we did have on. So I think going forward, we may need time in thinking of how we can get more parent participation.
Yes, we, in addition to the larger full town hall that will be happening on May 27th, we are also leading a training for our staff on May 26th, so the day prior, where we're turning over some of the opportunity to be a leader and sharing and investing families in the school plan with the teachers. So they will have time on that day to plan and prepare for outreach that they will make to their individual pods. They will have a goal of having a one-on-one meeting, at least one touch point with every family that they serve, to have an individual conversation with them, to answer their questions about the school plan, address the questions that they can't answer about reopening, as a way to invest families and build confidence in returning. And they will also likely preview some plans we have over the summer to invite families back into the building, school tours during summer school to see the school up and running, and some other things we're doing over the summer. So the teachers hopefully will get in touch with every single family. And there will be some grade levels, I imagine, who will go above and beyond and do things together in addition to the one-on-one outreach, you know, host maybe a grade level conversation about the school plan and things like that.
Thank you. I think those one-on-one touch points will probably have the biggest impact.
Any other comments or questions on this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mercedes.
Hi, good evening. I was going to piggyback on what Patrick was saying about the participation with the parents. And I know we have we normally have 2 town halls, and my husband and I made one, and it was amazing that it was such a low turnout with parents on it. And I don't know what other way you can reach out to parents aside from the town hall to get the information passed on, outside of an email or a letter from the school to home. But I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle in reopening and getting the information out with the parent participation. Many are anxious to go back, but they still have questions. But again, if you don't participate, then you won't get the answers that you need. I know my kids, they're anxious to go back. And I know a lot of other kids are anxious to go back because I can hear them talking during the day, you know, with little sessions in the classroom and everything. But I mean, it's just a shaky situation, I guess, with, like I said before, the unknown. But going forward, I think DC Prep is doing a great job at, you know, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's to reopen safely and in a healthy manner.
Thank you for those comments. Do any of our parents have other suggestions for ways that the team could reach out to parents that might make them more responsive? I mean, I know this is still a very challenging time for many families and for the parents as well. But I think we would all be open to suggestions if any of you have any other thoughts.
I honestly don't have any other thoughts because, like I said, you do the emails, the town halls, you give the text, the phone numbers to text you. So I just don't know what other way it can be done.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, sure.
What day of the week and what times are you doing them? And have you done any research or experimented with that? Because I know from other schools, it can make a massive difference depending on what time and what day you do them.
It depends, for each campus does it at a slightly different time and day.
I just wonder if you go back and look at attendance by date and by time, if you will find any trends that are worth, you know what I mean? Sometimes something silly like that, which may sound absurd, we find actually makes a big difference.
Yeah, Jenny, I think that's.
Oh, sorry. I think I think that the town halls, and I agree, the attendance hasn't been great, but we have other data that we are getting from a lot of parents, you know, through a couple of sources: good re-enrollment, strong re-enrollment, more participation in our annual family survey, way more participants than we normally get and the responses have been really positive, as well as individual outreach that we did to families back in early April that indicate that some of our one-on-one outreach is some of the best way to build the relationship. And I know it's not always possible or efficient, but I think in a case like this, where we're trying to encourage students to return to in-person learning, we're going to get a better return on our investment with some individualized outreach, which is why, you know, it's good to offer the town hall and people will come to it, but I think we're going to get more bang for our buck with the individual hall, which is why we're investing there in kind of late May into June and over the summer.
I agree with Katie, and that's something that I was going to comment on, that I know it's difficult, to reach out to smaller groups. It's easier to just do something on a larger scale, but maybe during, I don't know, have like a group, that morning meeting that they have daily, maybe do like a whole grade and ask the parents to attend, and then address some of the concerns or questions or any information you want to relay. Just do that during that time. That might be a way to reach more parents and get more participation, because also it can be intimidating, to participate or make a comment or ask a question in those larger sessions. So maybe if it's done within your grade level, parents might feel more comfortable, to speak, because there might be some, it's just a friendlier environment. Maybe, they're more comfortable in that setup.
And on a personal note, as a parent, I often I'm like, oh, I'll just read the PowerPoint afterwards. I don't need to sit through the meeting, and I don't want to hear everybody's questions. So there is also a way that sometimes preparing for the town hall in a virtual world has made it, there's a pro and a con to it, but more efficient to get information. You can get the slides after the meeting. And
Do you videotape it and share the taping of it?
I don't know if we record them. We
I was
definitely
going to say, is I know
PowerPoint.
GDS does that, and there's a huge amount of usage of that. So
Yeah.
just a thought.
That's a really good idea.
We could do the Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio approach. We could offer $1 million if people come to the meeting. Now, I say that jokingly, but I don't know if we do like some incentive, like, maybe a prize or something not for the parent, but for your kid or something. I don't know. Maybe there's a way we could incentivize them to come with some kind of prize or something. Just thinking. So.
Appreciate the ideas. I think you guys have given us some good suggestions of things to think about, because I think we all agree that the goal is every family has their own preferences and their own schedules and their own needs. The commitment, though, that we need to make is ensuring that all of our families have the information that they need to feel confident that they understand the plan, and that they know what to expect. Right, that's really the goal, and what we need to figure out is just are we delivering on that goal? And I think there's ways for us to continue. I think we're making good progress, and I think we can continue to get better. Any other reactions or reflections on the draft school plan?
I just wanted to jump in and say, as someone who worked on Org Evolution with you all from the very beginning, it was so exciting to read this and kind of see it come together. And it sounded great from a content perspective. And I thought it also sounds really smart the way you've done it from a process perspective in terms of integrating it with reopening, and making all this effort to incorporate staff, really communicate well with families. So congratulations. This has been, as you said, Laura, many years in process, and I'm really excited about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay, Laura, what's next?
Next is the work that we're doing on our values. So what you see here on the screen is a draft of the values that we have been working on. So to take a big step back, we have always had values from our founding, and we believe very much in the importance of having values, and not just having a set of words on a piece of paper or on the website, but really having a shared understanding of who we are as a community. One of the things that we have realized over the last few years, though, is in an effort to be really clear, right, and to be really specific to all of the different people within our community, our students, our staff, et cetera, we have created many, many frameworks So we've had our values, we've had our student beliefs, we've had our adult beliefs, we have our community commitments, we have our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have, I'm sure I'm forgetting some things, but that's already like 5 or 6 different frameworks. And that just creates a level of like confusion and noise that doesn't feel very helpful. And so given that our success really comes down to how we interact with one another, we thought that coming back to school in person was such an important moment for us to really like lean in on our values and about the way in which we are holding ourselves accountable for how we engage with others in our community. And so in an effort to simplify, we said, okay, we're moving away from all of those frameworks that we have, and we're trying to like distill them down into what's most important. And this is a draft of what we have come up with. So don't pay too much attention to like exactly like the visuals or how it's organized, like pay more attention to the words. And if you look at them, you'll see that they are very much like both rooted in what our values have always been, but also reflect some changes in language to better reflect some of the areas of emphasis that we have through org evolution. So for example, the point around, we see the good, we find joy in learning and problem solving and progress and in one another's company. You can see the connections that has to, good minds, good hearts, and like our value around humor and joy. But it also evolves in important ways as well. And so we try to really think about what's the feedback that we've heard from people about either what's most important to us as an organization, what we've really tried to double down on through org evolution, and where they felt like the values like didn't totally land. And this is what we have come up with. So this reflects a lot of work from our senior team. On Monday, we will engage our principals and further refine them. And then we plan to take them to our staff in early June to get feedback. And then over the next like 6 to 9 months, we will be engaging our families and our students, and then like our staff again, to make sure that by the time we, solidify them, that they really have feedback from all members of our community, because they're meant to be community values, not just staff values. So that's the process that we're going through. Wanted to share them with you now before they're fully finalized, just as a way to, one, let you know that we are paying a lot of attention to the community element of this work, and give you an opportunity to ask questions or share any feedback about what you see when you see these values.
Well, I would just say that I think this is important, and a lot of organizations don't take the time to reflect, and then particularly don't take the time to crystallize. I think the fact that you've summarized these in so few words is really good. And I know that that's hard. It's much easier to use a lot of words, and getting it down to a few words that are clear, I am sure has taken a lot of effort. So I don't have any substantive comments, but I'm glad that you're doing the work.
Thanks, Michaela.
And Laura, is this in addition to the commitment to diversity and inclusivity statement, or is it separate, kind of additional but separate, or does it incorporate that now? And there's not a separate statement.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we were debating that in our last meeting. I don't think we don't have an answer yet. right? So I will need to come back and say where we're landing. I think at this point, I lean towards taking like a belt and suspenders approach, right? Of like having it both like in the values because it is so important, and also having a separate statement because it is so important. Because I think that there's probably more that we would want to say in our DEI statement than what will necessarily fit in like the little blurb under like we do the work. So I anticipate that it'll still be a both, but we did feel like it was important to try to like not only have it live separately.
I actually really applaud that it wasn't separate. I mean, if you do it as for an additional one, but I think it was incorporated in everything you said, rather than separating it and making it separate from everything. So I thought it was incorporated there.
Yeah, thank you.
But I agree with you. There's no harm in repeating it other places as well. So important.
Was there anything that surprised you when you looked at these? Was there anything that you're like, oh, like I wouldn't have expected that? Or does it seem to reflect the conversations that we've been having around like where we are trying to focus?
Well, it did surprise me not to see the diversity separated out, but I actually thought that was good. So that was also something I noticed.
It looked great to me, and I'm sure it's been a ton of effort and input, so I don't have anything to add, but I really enjoyed reading them, and it definitely felt like DC Prep, and it felt aspirational and inspirational when I read it.
Thank you. Patrick, Nicole, Mercedes, I'm curious about your perspective as you think about like, if our focus is on trying to have values that are community values, right? So it would be really trying to embody something that we aspire to both for like our adults and for our students. Does this resonate like when you think about this through the lens of your child?
For me, it does. These are things that, you know, we try to instill in our kids at home. So it's nice to see that at school that they will also get that reinforcement there. Just because they spend, I mean, typically, you know, pre-COVID, you know, this is where they spend the most of the time. This is this is the place where a lot of their ideas are shaped, and things of that nature. So I think it's great that the same things that we think about at home are now going to be brought to school, and it's going to be a big part of the makeup of who they are. So I'm in total agreement, and I'm with what you've put forth so far.
I'm glad. Patrick, Mercedes, is there anything that you think is missing as you look at this?
I was just thinking, Laura, I mean, it looks great. I was just trying to think exactly what you said. Is there anything, is there a pillar or value? And I was just thinking it from the perspective of the student, right? I value your heart. I value your mind. I value your actions. Is there anything else that I would throw there? I can't think right now, but I will let you know if I come up with something.
Sounds good. I'm going to take it as a win that there wasn't anything so glaring that you were like, I can't believe. So it's good.
No.
Would we want to include that we value the families and try to support them? Would that be, or is that kind of, I mean, is that kind of said?
It's a good question. I think the way that we've been talking about it is like we wanted it to be true we wanted these words to be able to be spoken by like anyone who is part of DC Prep. And so I think the way that we tried to think about that, like, you know, the fact that it takes so many different groups, you know, our staff, our families, our students to be able to pull the work off was the point around like, we belong together. Of really trying to say like, we are a community and we treat our families as community. We treat our kids as community, like our kids treat one another as community, right? That's been a huge focus for us, particularly like this school year. There's been such a strong emphasis on like how to get our students to be more supportive of one another in their learning, as we believe that carries so many benefits. So we were trying to, that's where we were trying to capture it, but it's helpful to hear that maybe that didn't totally come through.
Laura, it's interesting that you should say that. You know, I'm at the Department of Education, and our secretary yesterday in his first all hands spoke about, and obviously he was an educator, but he spoke about how children learn from children. He goes, children learn from children. He goes, teachers learn from teachers, administrators learn from administrators, when he's making one of his points and stuff. But that definitely resonates with the students learning from students.
Yeah, there is such an emphasis on making sure that that we are empowering our students as like learners with agency. Like that's such a big part of like our focus. And so that just rings really true, Patrick. Thank you. Okay, any other thoughts or feedback? And if not, then I will encourage you to reach out if there is anything else that you want to discuss about our values, but also like, you know, if you have any other questions or thoughts that you want to share about the plan reopening more broadly. Then in that case, I'm gonna turn it to Dan and Niels to give a quick update on AMC.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to keep it pretty brief because we're going to have more opportunities to share at future board meetings and committee meetings. At a high level, we're continuing to work with DGS and the DC Council to make sure that we have access to Wilkinson in time to do construction and open on time for the 22-23 school year. We've been seeing some good progress on that front. If things continue to go the way they've been going, we will have access by the time we need it, which is October of this year, to start construction. Because the timeline is pretty condensed, we're working on a lot of things in parallel. So we're still working with the government on the approval side, but to make sure that we can start actually, you know, shovels in the ground on October 1st of this year. We've already been onboarding a lot of the contractors that we'll be working with. So we have Schindberg Levinus on board as our architect. We have MCN on board as the general contractor. Some of you may know this was the same team that built both our Benning campuses and our Anacostia campuses. And so we're looking forward to what they can do at Wilkinson. We're going to bring more details to you all in the future, but I'll turn it to Niels. Is there anything you want to add, Niels?
Thanks, Dan. I'll just quickly share some updates in regards to the community engagement efforts. So the disposition hearing was at the end of March. That was entertaining and it went well. Thank you, Ms. Davey, for for being there and for supporting. I just needed the support. So I felt you through the text, so thank you. It went fairly well. And our regular engagement with the community has been going well as well. Just recently, we presented to the Fort Stanton Civic Association, and we shared our appreciation for their support. And they enthusiastically were excited to hear that things were continuing to progress well with our pursuit to be in Wilkinson. And later on, like in about an hour or so, we'll be meeting again with the ANC 8B Commission, which is where Wilkinson resides in, to be asking for a letter of support. We last presented to the commission in March, and that meeting went fairly well as well. So we are hoping for positive vibes going into this conversation later on today to ask for their letter of support, which we'll be adding to the packet that we'll be sharing with DGS to hopefully move things along. Any questions?
So don't let the brief update fool you all. This has represented like a massive amount of work by Niels and Dan. They have both done a tremendous job of leading forward on their respective like components of this project. There's a lot that, as you all know, right, there's a lot that goes into being able to make a school a home for our students. So we are super, super grateful to everything that Niels and Dan have been doing, with lots of advice from Terry and support from Nicole. So so thank you all for the work that you guys have done to move this forward. I think
All good.
I think that's our content for tonight. So I will ask Michaela if we're at that point where we are ready to go into closed session. We have under, just a minute, let me find my,
You want me to read it?
DC official code 2-575B10 allows the board to go into closed meeting for personnel matters, including appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation. And so if there's a, Mila, maybe you want to ask for the motion?
Sure, if I could have a motion that we go into closed session. We do have a couple of personnel matters to discuss.
Motion.
Okay, thank you. Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so I'm going to go around the room again to take the vote. So just based on who I see where on my screen. Judy, you're first. Okay, that was an aye. Let's see, Hadley.
Aye.
Okay. Terry.
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Jenny.
Aye.
Maura.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye. Aye.
Ahmad.
Aye.
Patrick.
Aye.
Let me see, where am I? Mercedes.
Hi.
I think I got everyone. The motion carries. It's unanimous that we go into closed session. So with that, we will begin the closed session with Laura with us, and then we'll do a closed session without Laura. But I'd like to again extend our thanks to all the staff for their hard work, and we will excuse you at this time.